Welcome to Automation Unscripted, an educational, frank, and fun podcast dedicated to the art of business process automation. Automation Unscripted is brought to you by Virtual Operations, a leading consultancy in digital transformation, with more than a decade's experience working with organizations to help them grow their return on investment in automation.
Welcome back to another episode of Automation Unscripted. Today, myself and Kieran are going to be talking about IDP, which is Intelligent Document Processing. Kieran, you a bit of an expert on this topic?
Oh, I like to think I'm a bit of an expert in every topic, Dan, this being no exception. But in reality, yes, I've used this technology for years and in the right circumstances, and there's lots, I absolutely adore it. So today is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and where I wanted to start was intelligent document processing. The term's been around for a while, right? Or document processing, however you want to call it. So this topic, if we go past the last decade, maybe even 15 years, it's very recently in the past 5 or so that IDP has started leveraging AI, machine learning, and it's then able to automate the processing, extraction, analysis of data in multiple different formats, right? So all organizations will take in data in some format or another, and it's the data and documents, and it's the job of whatever tools and processes an organization has to process those. It might be people, it might be technology, any of those things. So that's
combination of the both.
Exactly. Usually is, right? Bit of human in the loop, maybe.
I kind of like that, and I love your history there on this piece here, because it's not new technology, but by goodness has it developed out of what I would describe as humble origins, or little OCR back in the day, which was effective when done right. IDP, I think, has given OCR a bad name to a degree, but only on the basis of the capabilities and the extraordinary capabilities that it can now deliver to an organization, because you have obviously machine learning and AI and everything else built in. So really good tech, really exciting, mature, fair to say. I know some companies have tried to do unique things under the IDP banner. So for example, fractional AI, I'll not name the company doing it, but they have a lot of success in the insurance space and. So again, interesting tech. I think that there's still, despite the growth in digital tooling, there's still billions and billions and billions of documents being transacted every single day in the world. That represents a huge opportunity to leverage great data that you might otherwise not, by bringing it into your organization, as you're mentioning, Dan, digitizing that, and then doing something with that data as well. So a great topic, great area, something that definitely people should look at.
Yeah, you said billions there. I reckon billions still being done manually by people as well. Still see it everywhere. Even, I'll give you a smaller example. I went to a chiropractor the other day, and behind the front desk, it was just a giant bookcase of all patient records. And I felt like just floating them a little summary on the document processing and thinking, you could do a lot here. You could completely remove that bookshelf and get rid of all your all your documents.
But where would I find things?
So I wanted to talk then a little bit about the history, right? About where IDP is now compared to where it was. And the first one was, and this is, again, like every podcast we do, not an exhaustive list. I just took 3 areas. I could have listed about 12. So the first one would be advances in AI and machine learning. So back in the early years, IDP really relied on sort of rule-based systems and what we would call basic OCR, which is optical character recognition, those type of technologies. And they were really limited in handling complex and unstructured documents. I gave an example a few podcasts ago about handwriting for an Indian client we had. Really difficult. We didn't have the tech a decade ago to do it. OCR wasn't quite capable, so that fits well into this example. But in recent years, the incorporation of advanced AI and machine learning has really changed that. And now we're able to understand and process those complex documents. So you've got deep learning, natural language processing, which NLP, computer vision, all of those sort of together have meant that complex unstructured data can now be managed as it was before in the early years, just with the rule-based sort of structured data.
Yeah, it's interesting though, Dan, isn't it? Rule-based structured data, that worked. It really did. You could get all of a sudden, we have an invoice in, assuming everything was pretty consistent, a whole host of data out. But as you said earlier on, all of a sudden the limitations, or is it limitations, Dan? Did the limitations appear, or did our demands for access to more valuable data actually increase? And therefore all of the deep learning, the natural language processing, the computing vision enhancement suddenly allowed us even more joy, for want of a better phrase, at getting access data. But a really good early year summary. And I would say that has been one of the biggest things, the development in those tech. And then probably the second thing is that shift, as you described, from rules-based to AI-driven. Mm-hmm. So rather than having extensive, manually configured, rigid layouts where, it was very difficult to get the software to adopt to new types and new formats, you were constantly reconfiguring. Now AI systems in recent years, particularly using machine learning as the actual engine or the back end of it, allow you to, automatically, or allow the software to automatically adopt and adapt to new document types. And that in itself is a huge benefit in terms of flexibility, the reduced need for manual intervention and retraining and resetting every single time something's coming in. I really like that shift.
Yeah, and it's the learning shift as well, right? One of the things that we had in the rule-based was just if you look at a document and something changes, unless you actually plan that into the rules, the tool will not pick that up. But now with AI, it has some flexibility around that. And when I say some, I probably mean a lot of flexibility depending on what tool you're using. You don't have to explain some of these rules. It's just searching for a certain piece of data. And if it's not in the right format, it can still find that. The last one I've put here is enhanced OCR capabilities. So when I said basic OCR, that was what OCR was 10 years ago. Now with the inclusion of AI and deep learning, we really have seen that those OCR technologies have taken on a whole new life. So that really falls into both what we talked about, advances in AI and the shift from rule-based to AI-driven systems. And I think you and I have actually seen that real time, right, Kieran?
No, we have. Do you know what I mean? I think you and I have probably seen everything, but that desire, that need or ability to look at diverse layouts, handwritten styles, as I said, we mentioned earlier on billions and billions and billions of documents and cabinets. People are still doing a lot of basic stuff. We're not talking about needing IDP for absolutely everything, because there's standard forms out there that, if you just took the data out of them and used the data with inside of that to enrich the existing structured data you have, by goodness, you could make far better decisions. But now, we've improved all technology, and IDP is no exception. It allows us to do and create and to deliver more data extraction, more data insights off the back of that. Long may it continue. But if we got a case study, Dan, maybe to bring this to life, maybe we could talk about a particular example of how someone might benefit from it.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this in terms of, let's look at IDP and some of the benefits. I've thought of the top 8 benefits, right, that an organization would usually get from implementing this type of technology. And then I've put together just a brief case study on a goods and services organization, which I think we can then express how some of those benefits might be realized from that organization. So it's not a particular organization, just a retail giant managing huge amounts of inventory and goods across multiple locations, right? They were looking to modernize their document processing in order to realize some of those efficiencies. So we're looking at improvement of accuracy. We're looking at increased efficiency. They're looking to reduce cost. They're looking to better utilize their data. They need to ensure compliance, enhance customer experience. They're looking for a scalable solution as well. And they're looking for seamless integration. So those are the 8. Probably more here that you'd get some of those direct and indirect benefits. But if we focus on those 8, I think we can start talking about how those benefits and how an organization like the retail giant that we're talking about may benefit from IDP. So why don't we start with accuracy, Kieran?
Yeah, look, let's be honest, Dan. you and I as humans, I hope we're accurate. But once we have looked at a document 100 times a day, probably number 101 isn't going to be the most accurate swivel chair or copy paste of a data from a system, a document into an actual system. So for example, I might have a lot of invoices coming in or purchase orders. I need to extract that data out of those. I might need to put it in Excel, do some manipulation, put it into an ERP, a CRM, a finance application. I'll get it right the first time because it's interesting. 101, less interesting, and therefore I'm going to naturally make mistakes. And again, I'm not perfect. Humans tend to get things wrong later in the day, Fridays or whatever else. But when you put in automation technology like this, it chews up volumes and volumes of data, and it works at 100% all of the time in terms of energy and effort. It won't make the same mistakes that a human makes, subject to its training, of course. And again, even in terms of accuracy, when you start to walk through that, if I get it right first time, then my rework doesn't happen. So I'm helping the individual by taking this mundane but valuable task, getting it right more times than a person, working 24/7 to allow me to deliver this around the clock. I'll make less errors. I'll have less refixing, which costs money. I'll have less frustration and boredom if I have to do the job and then fix the stuff that got wrong the first time round. So really excited about this. And AI, that's the nice bit. If it gets something wrong and you train it, it'll remember it. And you can keep training and training and training and gradually improving the accuracy of what you got. And if the computer can't read it, pass it to a human who can put their eyes over it as well. Back to human in the loop.
Yeah, and on that accuracy, right, those human errors can be pretty detrimental towards an organization like this. I mean, even getting an order number wrong or inventory incorrect, I think I've actually seen live where a mistake has happened and we had an automated process that shows trucks being filled up with inventory. And we had all the cameras set up so you can actually see that process working. And there was an error from the back end by a human, which meant that those trucks were just stalled there because they didn't believe they had the correct amount of inventory. And so you can just see from that, right? There's one example, but they can be really costly for those type of errors. Whereas with the correct technology in place, that just won't happen.
Yeah. Putting the ones in the billions, not the millions column.
Yeah, exactly. And the second one then is increase in efficiency. So if you look at the huge amounts of volumes and documents that an organization will have to manage, if they have, say, an individual or multiple individuals, hundreds of individuals doing them, that's obviously not the most efficient way to run. These people have to be trained. They are prone to errors, as we just talked about. They can only work a certain shift. These type of technologies can run all day, every day, right, without those errors. And they're much more efficient in terms of how quickly they can process those documents. Yeah. So, and if we just look at other examples as well, let's look at seasonal peaks and shifts in the amount of documents, invoices that organizations need to get through. A decade ago, in order to make that happen, you would have to ramp up and ramp down your team doing that. You don't have to ramp up and down these technologies. You can just add that. You can just add more licenses to handle that amount of invoices at the click of a button, as opposed to all the training and all the overheads that you'd have to go through doing it to a team.
And all the mistakes. And again, you know yourself, Dan, we've seen it thousands of times over. Seasonal labor doesn't get quite the training that they deserve. And without being judgmental about all seasonal labor, they sort of know they're going to be there for a while. And the connection with the company and the desire to get it right 100% of the time isn't necessarily there either. So again, it's a cost, it's efficiency, it's a rework side of things. And again, to one of the next objectives / benefits, the reduction in cost. You know, to shift or to put in 3 shifts, 2 shifts, you know, train people, hire people, risk audit them, secure check them, put in the computing technology, train and train and train, replace, train. It's a crazy amount of money, you know. And as you said, whether we like it or not, human labor cost is one of the most significant and most business costs around. So if you can lower the operational cost associated with manual document processing based on the volumes in any business, you've already got a huge benefit in there alone on cost, never mind accuracy, never mind efficiency.
Yeah, and on that as well, when talking about costs, I see sort of all the technologies under IDP as a spectrum, right? You don't need the flashy high-end AI, ML, natural language processing models if your process isn't fit for that, right? Those more expensive models, you can have technology that is also cost efficient for your organization. So you get both the cost savings and the cost efficiency. The point I wanted to bring up earlier about that spectrum of tools. You don't always need the latest and greatest tech if it's not fit for purpose for your process.
You do not. Although, Dan, you'll have now loads of people who are trying to promote generative AI screaming at their audio devices.
Let's go on to the next one then. Better data utilization. So the system, these technologies allow the extraction of that structured data from unstructured documents. And now this is what can be really valuable to an organization, because you can then look at things like inventory management in a much more pinpoint and specific way. You can look at demand forecasting, supplier negotiations. If you have the right technology around the data that you're being provided, you really can utilize it for an organization like this and make huge strides and improvements in those areas that I just talked about.
Oh, yes. This is my most exciting one because I'm an absolute avid fan of what I call great decision insight. What that means is give people in their roles access to great decision-making tooling, material, reports, whatever you want to call it, to allow them to make better decisions from before. And if you look at a retail giant, even scanning in 1,001 different invoices, understanding your hottest product lines, your best suppliers, your worst suppliers, those suppliers who offer you better payment terms that you can suddenly take advantage of by paying earlier than those that don't. The information that maybe comes in document format from customer surveys, customer responses, complaints, you name it, market research data, reports that are fed into you from industry bodies. When you start to consume that data and amalgamate it with your own production data, your own retail data, all of a sudden the data set's really, really, really rich. Build that right report, and this treasure trove of insight or data that's in your tons of different documents and types and invoices and queries and pro formas. My goodness, that is something that is what you might call a digital asset, a data asset that most people aren't realizing. A tool like IDP will suddenly allow you to realize the value from all of your data, or a hell of a lot more of it. Get documents in, scan them in, get data in, better compliance. Not the most sexiest one, but big retail giants, never mind banks, and IDP can be used anywhere. Literally, you can adhere better to regulatory standards. Once you understand all of the data and all of the things that are coming inside of your business, you can make better decisions. And with the technology actually checking everything consistently 24/7, you're going to be more compliant rather than less compliant when it comes to all sorts of regulations.
Yeah, and then we move on to the next one, which for me would be enhanced customer experience. This doesn't need much explanation, if I'm being perfectly honest. I think everything above cost savings, efficiency, accuracy, compliance, everything trickles down to the customer ultimately. If an organization is working well in terms of being efficient in that nature, that customer experience really will see that. So if we're working on that back end and all those efficiencies, accuracy are being met, that will trickle down to the customer. If you just look at an example, right? Goods and services, customer expects that he needs a certain amount of goods within the next 2 days. If you have that accuracy and that efficiency on the back end using IDP, that customer inevitably will be happy because they will get their items within that 2-day window, right? That's just an example. I think just customer experience is the key here.
Yeah, plus one it. No need to add anything on to got my data, got my answer, done. That's all I want, the minimum I can expect. I would say scalable as well, goes back to what we're saying. And, document volumes aren't decreasing, they're increasing if everything is visible and true that I am seeing, which is extraordinary in the digital age. But if volumes are increasing, the only way to do that manually is to increase your headcount, because you can't really get your workforce to work 60, 90 hours a week. And therefore goes back to your point earlier on, technology, the more you feed it, the greedier it is, the more it can handle. We as humans, unfortunately, if you've got 100 documents per person per day and you suddenly have 200 documents, well, you need 2 people. And then if you're 300 documents, you need 3 people plus a supervisor. There's no real scalability when it comes to humans, unless it's, just volume and volume and volume of people. But what tends to happen is as teams grow, they become even less efficient. Whereas if you check more technology at it, becomes even more efficient and more scalable.
Yeah, the scalability is a key one, right? Just the click of a button in order to increase your team. And it might be multiple clicks, but you get the point.
I do.
The next one on the last one is integration. I've put seamless integration here. I'm going to change that relatively seamless integration. Seamless acts as if it's just, again, one click of a button. It's not that. I think in the 6 or 7 tools I've personally implemented with the team, relatively seamless is the rule there, with the exception being one of those tools, which I don't really want to talk about, if I'm being honest. But you can see here how you can implement this type of technology quite easily, right? You don't need to be a tech wizard to get it in, get it working, get it set up, and get it as part of your process.
No, you don't. But it's so flexible these days that, to get it into your existing IT infrastructure is pretty click point to a large degree. Obviously, there's training to be done as well, but you have to train staff, to link that into, for example, an inventory management system, a customer relationship management system, an enterprise ERP tool, or all of those. All of a sudden, your document management processes can be streamlined across your entire IT estate. And should you wish, build in some APIs to connect those systems together, put in some robotics to complement IDP, to allow it to, take the data that you've got, move it and shift it to other locations and other applications. It's really flexible, not like the bad old days where everything blue screened if you even brought anything within 1,000 yards of it. Now technology is built in a way that's modular, integratable, seamless, can expand and contract as you need. We now take it so much for granted, but you and I, Dan, have been in this industry for more years than we want to tell anyone. By goodness, have things moved on, and IDP is one of those tools that have moved on at a rate of knots. Well done, IDP market.
Well, you've probably tripled my time in the industry. I'll be honest, Kieran, don't really throw you under a bus there, but
I've divided mine by 3.
So you can see, right, and we've gone through the benefits there, but you can see why the topic of IDP, it impacts all organizations, right? Small, medium, large, how it's just in this example we've given, how it's a bit of a no-brainer to implement any of the tools on the entire spectrum that fall under IDP. Because you can see from the case study that we've shown that there are so many benefits, both direct and indirect, from utilizing this technology. And I think you would be crazy as an organization to either not have implemented it or at least have it on your radar.
100%. As you said earlier on, Dan, we've used a large retail giant, but I was using a piece of OCR software to import my business invoices recently. And that was only $35 a month. And if I wanted the company themselves to SaaS-based product, I had a new invoice come in that if it was complex and I just didn't have the time, for $160 to build the whole process itself for a small size business like me, there's a range of prices and a range of capabilities for everyone. It's such a flexible market. It's wonderful.
Yeah. 100%. It can be a bit of a minefield navigating the market, what's available. That would actually probably be the most challenging step in my view. But definitely,
they've got you for that. So now, folks, come visit Uncle Dan. He'll help you select your IDP platform without a doubt.
Yeah, and I think interesting spot to end there, but we'll leave on that note.
We'll now refer to you as Uncle Dan in future episodes.
A good conclusion. But in summary, then I think this type of tech is a no-brainer for all organizations, small, medium, large.
That's it. The outcome, the conclusion's as simple as the software and the benefits. It's just that simple.
Perfect. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. Catch you next time.
Thanks, everyone.